The prayer escaped his lips in a whisper he thought no one could hear. Please let her be white this time. But fate had other plans, and the stunning black woman approaching his table had heard every devastating word. What started as a man's cowardly wish would become the beginning of a love story that would tear families apart, force buried prejudices into the light, and test whether two hearts could survive the weight of a world determined to keep them separated. When his parents' polite dinner conversation turned into a minefield of veiled racism, he faced an impossible choice: defend the woman he was falling for, or protect the family peace he'd spent a lifetime preserving. One moment of silence would shatter everything, but sometimes the greatest love stories are born from the ashes of our worst mistakes. The question isn't whether love can conquer all, it's whether a man can conquer himself before it's too late. If you're watching this incredible journey of love, growth, and second chances, hit that subscribe button and tell me what city you're watching from. The rain hadn't started yet when Ethan Grant pushed through the glass door of Rosemary's Bistro. He was 15 minutes early, which meant 15 more minutes to worry about everything that could go wrong tonight. Mark Ellis had set him up on this blind date 3 weeks ago. "Trust me, man," Mark had said, grinning that easy smile that usually meant trouble. "She's perfect for you. Smart, funny, works with seniors, like you do with your renovation clients. You'll love her." But Ethan didn't want to love anyone right now. Love meant complications. Love meant meeting families who might not understand. Love meant having hard conversations he'd spent 32 years learning to avoid. He checked his phone, still 14 minutes early. The hostess, a young woman with bright pink hair, smiled at him. "Table for two? Actually, I'm meeting someone. Grant, party of two? Right this way." She led him to a small table near the back window. Perfect. Quiet enough to talk, but not so hidden that it felt like he was ashamed to be seen. Though honestly, he wasn't sure what he was feeling tonight. Mark slid into the booth across from him, still wearing his work clothes from the construction site. "You look like you're about to throw up." "Thanks. That's exactly the confidence boost I needed." "Relax." Mark reached across the table and straightened Ethan's collar. "She's going to love you. Just be yourself." "What if myself isn't good enough?" Mark rolled his eyes. "What if the sky falls down? What if aliens land in the parking lot?" "Dude, you're overthinking this." Ethan glanced around the restaurant. Couples chatted over wine. Families shared plates of pasta. Everyone looked so comfortable, so sure of their place in the world. When had life gotten so complicated for him? "She should be here any minute," Mark said, checking his own phone. "I'm going to head out and let you two get acquainted." "Wait, don't." But Mark was already standing, patting Ethan's shoulder. "You've got this. And if you don't, at least you'll get a good meal out of it." Alone at the table, Ethan fidgeted with his napkin. He straightened the salt and pepper shakers, checked his phone again. Tried to remember the last time he'd been this nervous about anything. The truth was, he'd been on 3 dates in the past year. One woman spent the entire evening talking about her ex-husband. Another seemed nice until she made a comment about his simple job that made his teeth clench. The third date had been with Sarah, a teacher Mark had introduced him to 6 months ago. Sarah was lovely. Smart, kind, easy to talk to. She was also black, and the moment Ethan realized he'd have to introduce her to his parents, he'd panicked. Not because of Sarah herself, but because of the look he knew he'd see in his mother's eyes. The careful questions, the polite smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. He'd ended things, with Sarah after 4 dates, telling himself it was because they didn't have enough in common. But late at night, when he was honest with himself, he knew the real reason. He was a coward. And now here he was again, about to meet another woman Mark had set him up with. Mark hadn't told him much about her, except that she worked in healthcare and loved old movies. He'd been intentionally vague, which usually meant something. Ethan leaned forward and closed his eyes for a moment. "Please," he whispered, so quietly he could barely hear himself. "Just, please let her be white this time, okay? I'm tired of complicated." "Excuse me?" The voice came from right beside his table. Ethan's eyes flew open, and he looked up to see the hostess standing there with a woman he'd never seen before. She was beautiful, stunning, actually. Her dark skin seemed to glow in the soft restaurant lighting. She wore a simple blue dress that brought out her warm brown eyes. Her hair was pulled back in a way that showed off her graceful neck, and from the expression on her face, she'd heard every word of his whispered prayer. "Ayana?" The hostess looked between them. "This is your table." The woman Ayana stood perfectly still for a moment. Her eyes met Ethan's, and he saw hurt flash across her features before she covered it with a polite smile. "Thank you," she said to the hostess, her voice steady and calm. Ethan scrambled to his feet, his face burning with embarrassment. Hi, you must be." "I'm Ethan," I figured. She slid into the seat across from him, her movements careful and controlled. "And yes, I'm Ayana." The hostess disappeared, leaving them alone at the table with the weight of his terrible words hanging in the air between them. Ethan sat back down heavily. "I need to apologize." "Do you?" Ayana folded her hands on the table, her voice still perfectly calm. "For what, exactly?" He opened his mouth, then closed it. She was going to make him say it out loud. "For what you heard when you walked up." "Which was?" He swallowed hard. "I said something I shouldn't have said." "Specifically?" The server appeared beside their table, cheerfully oblivious to the tension. "Good evening. Can I start you folks off with something to drink?" "Water, please," Ayana said without taking her eyes off Ethan. "Same," he managed. "I'll give you a few minutes to look over the menu," the server said, and hurried away. When they were alone again, Ayana leaned forward slightly. "So, please let her be white. Is that a usual pre-date prayer, or was tonight special?" Ethan felt like he was drowning. Yes, I said that. And I'm sorry." "Are you sorry you said it, or sorry I heard it?" The question hit him like a punch to the chest. "Both," he admitted. For the first time since she'd sat down, something shifted in her expression. Not forgiveness, exactly, but maybe curiosity. "Why?" she asked. "Why am I sorry? Why did you pray for me to be white?" Ethan looked down at his hands. How could he explain without sounding even worse? Because it would be easier." "Easier how?" "My family." He stopped, shook his head. "No, that's not fair to them. It's me I'm afraid of. Complicated. And I'm complicated." It wasn't a question, and he could hear the pain underneath her steady voice. "No," he said quickly. "You're not complicated. The situation would be the looks, the comments, the questions. My mother asking if I've thought this through. My co-workers making jokes, strangers staring when we hold hands." Ayana was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer but no less serious. "I dated someone like you in college." "Like me?" "A white guy who thought I was beautiful and funny and smart, who took me on wonderful dates and told me he cared about me, but who never introduced me to his friends, who found excuses not to bring me to family gatherings, who made me feel like a secret." Ethan's stomach twisted. "Ayana, when I finally met his parents by accident at a restaurant, his mother looked at me like I was a stray dog he'd brought home. And you know what he did?" "What?" "Nothing. He sat there while she asked me where I was really from and whether I'd ever considered dating within my own race. He didn't say a word." The server returned with their waters. "Ready to order?" "Actually," Ayana said, still looking at Ethan, "I think I'll just have a drink. Something strong." "I'll have a beer," Ethan said. "Whatever you have on tap." When they were alone again, Ayana continued. "After dinner, when I asked him why he didn't defend me, you know what he said?" Ethan shook his head. "He said I was being too sensitive, that his mother just needed time to get used to the idea." She picked up her water glass and took a sip. 3 months later, he broke up with me to date a blonde girl from his economics class. They were married within a year. "I'm not him." "Aren't you?" She studied his face. "You just prayed to God that I'd be white so you wouldn't have to deal with any discomfort. How is that different?" Ethan didn't have an answer. She was right, and they both knew it. "I should go," she said, starting to reach for her purse. "Wait." The word came out more forcefully than he'd intended. "Please." She paused, her hand on her bag. "You're right," he said, "about all of it. I am afraid of complicated. I am worried about what people will think. And that makes me exactly like that guy who hurt you." He met her eyes. "But I don't want to be like him. Wanting and being are two different things." "I know that." He leaned forward. "Look, I'm probably about to make this worse, but I've been attracted to black women before. And every time I've talked myself out of pursuing anything because I was scared of exactly what you're talking about. The judgment, the stares, the family drama. And you think telling me that helps how? Because I'm tired of being scared. The words surprised him as much as they seemed to surprise her. I'm 32 years old, and I've spent my entire life avoiding anything that might make waves. I choose the safe job, the safe friends, the safe dates, and I'm miserable. She was listening now, really listening. I can't promise I won't mess this up, he continued. I can't promise my family won't say stupid things or that I won't freeze up when they do. But I can promise that I don't want to be the kind of man who makes a woman feel like a secret. Their drinks arrived. Ayana had ordered a vodka tonic that she sipped slowly while studying his face. What do you do for work? She asked after a long moment. The change of subject caught him off guard. I'm a contractor, home renovations mostly. Do you like it? I do. There's something satisfying about taking a space that's broken or outdated and making it better, making it work for the people who live there. I'm a physical therapy assistant, she said. I work mostly with seniors in their homes. That must be rewarding. It is. I have this client, Mrs. Green. She's 78, lives alone, broke her hip last year. When I first started working with her, she could barely make it from her bed to the bathroom. Last week, she walked to the corner store by herself to buy groceries. That's amazing. She keeps asking me when I'm going to find a nice young man and settle down. Ayana smiled for the first time, since she'd sat down, and Ethan felt something loosen in his chest. I told her I'm not sure there are any nice young men left. Present company excluded, I hope. Jury's still out. They talked for another hour, about their work, their families, their favorite movies. Ayana told him about growing up with an overprotective older sister and a father who fixed buses for the city. Ethan shared stories about helping his clients make their homes safer and more comfortable. The conversation felt natural, easy in a way that surprised them both. When Ayana laughed at one of his stories about a bathroom renovation gone wrong, Ethan found himself relaxing for the first time all evening. I should probably head home, she said finally, glancing at her phone. I have an early appointment tomorrow. Of course, Ethan signaled for the check. Can I? Would it be okay if I walked you to your car? She considered this. Okay. Outside, a light rain had started to fall. Ethan pulled out his umbrella and held it over both of them as they walked across the parking lot. That's mine, Ayana said, pointing to a small blue Honda. They stopped beside her car, and Ethan felt the weight of the moment. This could be it. She could get in her car and drive away, and he'd never see her again. Ayana, he said, I know I started tonight all wrong, and I know I have a lot to figure out about myself, but would you be willing to give me a chance to do better? She looked at him for a long moment, raindrops caught in her hair like tiny diamonds. What does that mean exactly? I don't know yet, he admitted, but I'd like to find out, with you. She unlocked her car door but didn't open it. If I give you my number, and if you text me, don't send me excuses or apologies. Send me something that sounds like a man who's actually learning. I can do that. She pulled out her phone, and they exchanged numbers. As she got into her car, she rolled down the window. Ethan? Yeah? I meant what I said. I won't be anyone's secret. I won't be someone's experiment. And I won't teach a grown man how to stand up for what's right. I understand. I hope you do. She drove away, leaving Ethan standing in the parking lot with rain falling around him and his heart beating faster than it had in years. Back in his apartment an hour later, he sat at his kitchen table staring at his phone. He'd typed and deleted a dozen different messages. Thank you for tonight. Delete. I'm sorry about how things started. Delete. I hope I can prove I'm different. Delete. Finally, he typed, thank you for staying tonight when you had every right to leave. If you're ever willing to have coffee, I'd like to earn a second chance. He hit send before he could change his mind. 3 hours later, just as he was getting ready for bed, his phone buzzed. Coffee Tuesday, 5 p.m. at Common Ground Cafe. Nothing fancy. Ethan stared at the message for a full minute before typing back, I'll be there. He set his phone aside and lay back against his pillows, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. He had no idea what he was doing or how this would work out, but for the first time in years, he was excited to find out. Outside his window, the rain had stopped, and the city lights twinkled like stars against the dark sky. Tomorrow, he'd start figuring out how to be the kind of man who deserved a second chance. Tonight, though, he just let himself hope. Tuesday came faster than Ethan expected. He spent Monday second-guessing everything: what to wear, what to say, whether showing up early made him look eager or desperate. By Tuesday afternoon, he'd changed clothes 3 times and arrived at Common Ground Cafe 15 minutes early anyway. The cafe was exactly the kind of place he'd expected Ayana to choose: warm, welcoming, with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. Not fancy, but comfortable. He ordered a coffee and found a table by the window where he could watch for her car. She arrived exactly at 5, parking across the street and taking a moment to check her reflection in her side mirror. She wore jeans and a soft green sweater that made her skin glow. When she pushed through the cafe door, she spotted him immediately and walked over with the same careful composure she'd shown at the restaurant. "You're early," she said, hanging her purse on the back of her chair. "Old habit. My dad always said showing up on time means you're already late. Sounds like a smart man." She glanced toward the counter. "I'm going to get something to drink. Want anything?" "I'm good, thanks." He watched her order a chai latte with oat milk and noticed how she smiled at the barista, asked about his day, left a generous tip. Small things, but they told him something about who she was. When she returned to the table, she sat back in her chair and studied him openly. "So, how was your weekend?" "Quiet. Worked on a kitchen renovation for a client, watched some baseball, thought about Friday night more than I probably should have." "What did you think about?" The directness of her question caught him off guard, but he appreciated it. No games, no dancing around the subject. How badly I messed up, how much I don't know about myself, how I've spent so long avoiding difficult conversations that I don't even know how to have them anymore. She sipped her chai, considering his words. "Tell me about your family." "My parents live about 20 minutes from here. My dad's a retired accountant. My mom taught elementary school until a few years ago. I have a younger sister, Kelly, who just moved up to a lake town about 2 hours north. She's a nurse. Are you close with them?" Ethan thought about how to answer that. "I love them, but we've never talked about anything really important. Politics, religion, relationships, we just keep everything surface level. It's easier that way." "Easier for who?" "For everyone," I thought. "But maybe just for me." Ayana nodded slowly. "What about friends?" "Mark, obviously. A few guys from high school I still see sometimes. Some people from work." He paused. "What about you?" "My sister Lena is my best friend, even though she drives me crazy. My dad and I are close. He taught me to change a tire and balance a checkbook and never take less than I deserve." She smiled. "I have a few friends from nursing school, some co-workers. Mrs. Green, my client I mentioned, she's become like a grandmother to me. Tell me about her." "She's incredible. Sharp as a tack, tells me. Stories about growing up in the South during segregation. She moved north when she was young, met her husband at a church social. They were married 43 years before he passed." Ayana's expression softened. "She keeps telling me that love is worth fighting for, even when it's scary. Especially when it's scary. Sounds like she's a wise woman." She is. She also keeps asking when I'm going to bring that young man around for her to meet. "You've mentioned me to her?" "I mentioned that I went on a date. She's very interested in my social life." They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing more easily than it had at the restaurant. Ayana told him about her work, the satisfaction of helping people regain their independence, the heartbreak of watching some clients struggle. Ethan shared stories about his renovation projects, the elderly couple whose bathroom he'd made wheelchair accessible, the single mother whose kitchen he'd redesigned to work better for her busy life. "Why that kind of work?" Ayana asked. "You could probably make more money doing new construction." "I like fixing things that are broken," he said simply, "making them work better for the people who use them. There's something hopeful about it. That's a good way to look at it." As the cafe began to empty out, Ayana glanced at her phone. "I should probably head home soon. Early day tomorrow." "Of course." Ethan hesitated. "Can I ask you something?" "Shoot. What made you decide to give me a second chance?" She was quiet for a moment, turning her cup in her hands. "Honestly, I almost didn't. I went home Friday night angry. At you, at myself for being disappointed, at the whole situation. What changed your mind? My sister. She pointed out that you could have made excuses or tried to lie your way out of what I heard. But you didn't. You owned it, even though it made you look terrible. She met his eyes. That meant something. I'm glad. Don't be glad yet. I'm still figuring out if you're worth the risk. Fair enough. They walked outside together, the early evening air cool and crisp. At her car, Ayana turned to face him. Ethan? Yeah? I need to tell you something. I have ground rules. For any man I'm seeing, but especially for this situation. Okay. First, no jokes about race, not about me, not about other people, not even ones you think are harmless. They're not harmless to me. Understood? Second, don't pretend color doesn't matter. Don't tell me you don't see color, or that we're all the same. We're not all the same, and that's not a bad thing. But it is a real thing. Ethan nodded. Third, if we do this, we do it honestly. I won't be your dirty little secret, and I won't be your rebellion against your parents. I'll be your girlfriend, or I'll be nothing at all. Those seem like reasonable requests. They're not requests, Ethan. They're requirements. Then I accept your requirements. She studied his face for a long moment, then smiled a real smile this time, not the polite one she'd worn all evening. I'm going to text you a picture later, she said. For Mark. He's been harassing me all week wanting to know how this went. He's been texting me every hour since yesterday. Good. Let him sweat a little longer. She got in her car, rolled down the window. Ethan? Yeah? Thank you for listening, really listening. Thank you for talking, really talking. She drove away, and Ethan found himself smiling as he walked to his own car. This was new territory for him, a woman who said exactly what she meant, who expected honesty instead of politeness, who wasn't going to make things easy for him. He liked it more than he'd expected. That night, his phone buzzed with a text from Ayana, a selfie of the two of them from the cafe, both smiling naturally. The message underneath read, For Mark, tell him we didn't kill each other. Ethan immediately forwarded it to Mark, who responded within seconds. Dude, she's gorgeous. Don't screw this up. For once, Ethan didn't feel the familiar twist of anxiety at the thought of not screwing things up. Instead, he felt determined. 3 days later, Ayana invited him to game night at her sister's apartment. Fair warning, she said over the phone. Lena's going to interrogate you. She's very protective. Should I be scared? Probably. Lena's apartment was small but cozy, filled with plants and books and the smell of something delicious cooking in the kitchen. Lena herself was taller than Ayana, with the same warm brown eyes but a more skeptical expression. So, you're the one who made my sister question her judgment in men, Lena said, by way of greeting. Lena, Ayana warned. What? I'm just establishing baseline honesty. She turned back to Ethan. Sit. We're playing cards, and I'm going to ask you uncomfortable questions. The evening was exactly as advertised. Over a game of spades, Lena grilled Ethan about his intentions, his family, his previous relationships, and his willingness to handle difficult situations with Ayana. What happens when your mother makes a comment? Lena asked, laying down a card. What kind of comment? The kind where she's trying to be polite, but she's really asking if you've thought about what your children would look like. Ethan felt heat creep up his neck. I guess. I'd tell her that's not her business. You guess? I would tell her it's not her business. And if she keeps pushing, then I'd make it clear that disrespecting Ayana means disrespecting me. Lena studied him for a moment, then nodded approvingly. Better answer. After the game, they moved to the kitchen for dessert. While Lena and her friend argued about the best way to make cornbread, Ayana nudged Ethan's shoulder. You're doing okay, she said quietly. Just okay. Lena hasn't kicked you out yet. That's progress. Later that night, as they left Lena's apartment, Ethan walked Ayana to her car. The street was quiet, lit by warm yellow streetlights that cast everything in a soft glow. Your sister's intense, he said. She's looking out for me. The last guy I dated seriously. Let's just say she has good reason to be suspicious of my taste in men. What happened? Ayana leaned against her car. His name was David. We dated for 8 months. He was sweet, attentive, told me he loved me, But I never met his friends, never met his family. When I asked about it, he always had an excuse. How did it end? I found out from a mutual friend that he'd been telling people we were just hanging out, that he wasn't ready for anything serious with anyone. She shook her head. The worst part wasn't that he lied, it was that I let him. What do you mean? I ignored the red flags because I wanted so badly for it to work. I convinced myself that his family was just busy, that his friends were hard to coordinate with. I made excuses for him when I should have demanded better. Ethan felt a familiar twist in his stomach. I don't want to be another David. Then don't be. It's not that simple, isn't it? She turned to face him fully. Either you're proud to be with me, or you're not. Either you stand up for me when it matters, or you don't. The choice is really that basic. They looked at each other in the soft light, the weight of her words settling between them. I want to be proud to be with you, he said finally. Wanting and doing are different things. I know, but I'm trying to figure out how to get from one to the other. She reached out and touched his arm briefly. Figure it out fast, Ethan. I don't have patience for a long learning curve. That weekend, Ethan helped his sister Kelly move the last of her things to her new place near the lake. The house was small but charming, with a view of the water from the living room window. I love it already, Kelly said, unpacking books onto a shelf. It's going to be perfect for starting over. Starting over from what? From Brad, obviously. She glanced at him. I never told you this, but he asked me to marry him right before I broke up with him. Ethan stopped folding clothes. What? Why didn't you tell me? Because you would have asked if I was sure, and I would have second-guessed myself, and I was already sure. She sat down on the couch. He was a good guy, Ethan, but he was safe in all the wrong ways. What does that mean? He never challenged me, never pushed me to grow, or try new things, or be better. We would have had a perfectly pleasant, perfectly boring life together. She looked out at the lake. I want more than that. More like what? More like what Mom and Dad never had. They love each other, but they've never really talked about anything that matters. They've been married 35 years, and I don't think Dad knows Mom's afraid of flying or that she wanted to travel when they were younger. They don't fight, but they don't really connect either. Ethan thought about his parents, about the polite conversations over Sunday dinners, the way they navigated around any topic that might cause conflict. Is that what I do? He asked. Avoid the hard stuff? Honestly? Yes, but I think you're starting to figure that out. What makes you say that? Kelly grinned. Mark told me about your mystery date. Said you actually seem interested in someone for once. It's complicated. Good. Complicated means real. That night, after helping Kelly set up her bed and organize her kitchen, Ethan sat on her porch overlooking the lake. The water was calm, reflecting the last light of the sunset like a mirror. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through his messages with Ayana. They'd been texting throughout the week, nothing deep, just daily check-ins, funny stories from work, pictures of particularly awful renovation disasters. But underneath the casual conversation, he could feel something building, a connection that felt different from anything he'd experienced before. Scarier, but also more real. He typed out a message, sitting by the lake, thinking about how much I want to show you this view someday. Her response came back quickly. Is this you asking me on a weekend trip? Maybe. Too soon? Probably. Ask me again in a few weeks. Deal. He put his phone away and leaned back in the chair. For the first time in years, he was looking forward to the unknown, looking forward to seeing where this thing with Ayana might go, even if he didn't know how to navigate it yet. The lake lapped gently against the shore, and somewhere in the distance, a loon called across the water. Ethan closed his eyes and let himself imagine bringing Ayana here, showing her the sunrise over the water, cooking breakfast together in Kelly's tiny kitchen. It was a good dream. Now he just had to figure out how to make it real. 2 weeks passed in a blur of ordinary moments that felt extraordinary. Ethan brought lunch to Ayana at one of her client visits, meeting Mrs. Green, who immediately declared him a keeper, and insisted on showing him her photo albums. Ayana stopped by one of Ethan's renovation sites, charming his elderly clients by helping them organize their medication schedule while he installed grab bars in their bathroom. They fell into an easy routine: dinner at Ayana's apartment on Tuesday nights, where they cooked together and argued playfully about whose turn it was to do dishes. Coffee dates on Saturday mornings, walking through the farmer's market and picking out ingredients for weekend meals. Quiet evenings on Ethan's couch, watching old movies and talking during the boring parts. It felt natural in a way that surprised them both. Easy, right, which made the growing anxiety in Ethan's chest all the more uncomfortable. He'd been putting off the conversation with his parents for 3 weeks now. Every time he picked up the phone to call them, he found an excuse. Work was busy. They seemed stressed about something. The timing wasn't right. The truth was, he was terrified. On a Wednesday evening, as they cleaned up after dinner at Ayana's place, she brought up the subject he'd been dreading. "When am I going to meet your parents?" she asked, rinsing soap suds from a plate. Ethan's hands stilled on the pot he was scrubbing. "Soon. That's what you said last week. I know. I just want to talk to them first. Prepare them." Ayana turned off the water and faced him. "Prepare them for what?" He struggled to find the right words, "for the fact that you're important to me. And that you're black." The words hung in the air between them. Ayana dried her hands slowly on the dish towel. "Do you think they'll have a problem with that?" she asked quietly. "I don't know. Maybe. They've never said anything directly, but..." He trailed off. But I've never brought a black woman home before. Have you brought any women home recently?" "Not in a couple of years." Ayana nodded thoughtfully. "Ethan, I need you to understand something. I can't go through what I went through with David again. I can't sit at a dinner table while people decide whether I'm acceptable. I can't pretend not to notice if your parents treat me like an unwelcome surprise. They won't." "How do you know?" He didn't have an answer for that. "Call them tonight," she said. "Set up dinner for this weekend. And don't just tell them you're bringing someone. Tell them you're bringing your girlfriend. And tell them my name." That night, Ethan sat in his kitchen staring at his phone for 20 minutes before finally dialing his parents' number. "Ethan," his mother's voice was warm and familiar. "What a nice surprise. We were just talking about you." "Hi, Mom. Is Dad there too?" "He's right here. Let me put you on speaker." "Hey, son," his father's voice came through the phone. "How's work going?" "Good. Really good." "Actually, that's not why I'm calling." He took a deep breath. "I wanted to ask if you'd like to have dinner this weekend. There's someone I'd like you to meet." A pause. "Someone?" "My girlfriend, Ayana. We've been seeing each other for a while now, and she's really important to me." Another pause, longer this time. "Well, of course," his mother said, her voice carefully bright. "We'd love to meet her." "What's she like?" "She's incredible. She's a physical therapy assistant, works with seniors. She's smart and funny and kind. You'll really like her." "That sounds wonderful, honey. Saturday night? That would be perfect. Should we do anything special? Cook anything particular?" Ethan hesitated. This was the moment. "Just whatever you normally make is fine. Ayana's not picky." "Ayana," his father repeated. "That's an unusual name." "It's beautiful," Ethan said firmly. "Just like she is." After they hung up, Ethan texted Ayana, "Saturday at 6. They're excited to meet you." Her response came back quickly. "Good. I'm excited to meet them too." But as Saturday approached, Ethan's anxiety grew. Small comments from his parents over the years came back to him. His mother's concern about changing neighborhoods when black families moved in down the street. His father's complaints about political correctness when discussing his workplace diversity training. They weren't bad people. They weren't actively racist. But they were comfortable in their white, middle-class bubble, and Ethan wasn't sure how they'd react to having that bubble challenged. Saturday evening arrived grey and drizzly. Ethan picked Ayana up at her apartment, noting how carefully she'd dressed a simple black dress with a cardigan, conservative jewelry, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. "You look beautiful," he said as she got in the car. "I look safe," she corrected. "There's a difference." The drive to his parents' house was quiet. Ethan kept glancing over at Ayana, who stared out the passenger window with an unreadable expression. "They're going to love you," he said as they pulled into the driveway. "We'll see." His parents' house was exactly what Ayana had expected, a neat colonial in a well-maintained suburb with a perfectly manicured lawn and seasonal decorations on the front porch. The kind of house that said, comfortable middle class, and no surprises, please. Carol Grant opened the door before they could knock, her smile wide and welcoming. She was a small woman with graying hair and kind eyes that took in Ayana's appearance in one quick glance. "You must be Ayana," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Carol, Ethan's mom." "It's so nice to meet you, Mrs. Grant," Ayana replied, her voice warm but formal. "Please, call me Carol." Come in, come in. Bill's in the living room." Ethan's father appeared in the hallway, tall and thin with wire-rimmed glasses and a cautious smile. "Ayana, welcome to our home. Thank you for having me, Mr. Grant. Bill is fine." They moved into the living room, which was decorated in soft blues and creams, with family photos on every surface. Ayana noticed that all the faces in the photos were white. "Can I get you something to drink?" Carol asked. "Wine? Water?" "We have some nice white wine open. Water would be wonderful. Thank you." As Carol bustled off to the kitchen, Bill gestured toward the couch. "Please, sit. Tell me about yourself." "Ethan says you work in healthcare?" "I'm a physical therapy assistant," Ayana said, settling carefully on the edge of the couch. "I work mostly with elderly clients, helping them regain mobility and independence after injuries or illness." "That must be rewarding work." "It is. I love seeing people get their lives back." Carol returned with drinks and settled into her chair across from them. "That's such important work. I'm sure it can be challenging too. Sometimes, but the victories make it worth it." Over dinner, the conversation stayed carefully neutral. Ayana answered questions about her work, her education, her family. She was polite, articulate, and charming, everything Ethan had known she would be. But he could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she chose her words carefully, the forced smile that never quite reached her eyes. His parents were polite too, almost too polite. They asked appropriate questions and made appropriate responses, but Ethan could sense something underneath their careful courtesy. "So, Ayana," his mother said over dessert, "have you and Ethan talked about the future at all?" Ethan felt his stomach drop. "Mum, I'm just curious." Carol continued. "Different backgrounds can make things complicated sometimes. I imagine you've thought about the practical considerations." "What kind of practical considerations?" Ayana asked, her voice still pleasant but with a slight edge. "Well, you know, what people might think, how challenging the world can be for couples who come from different places." "Different places?" "Different backgrounds," Bill interjected. "Different communities." Ethan felt heat creeping up his neck. "What are you trying to say?" "Nothing inappropriate," his mother said quickly. "Just that it's important to think about long-term compatibility. Whether you're prepared for people's reactions, how you'd handle it if things got difficult." Ayana set down her fork carefully. "What kind of reactions should we be prepared for?" An uncomfortable silence fell over the table. "People can be judgmental," Bill said finally. "Right or wrong, that's the reality. And you think we should let other people's judgments determine our relationship?" "Of course not," Carol said. "I just think it's wise to be realistic about challenges." Ethan looked around the table at his parents' carefully concerned faces, at Ayana's too calm expression, and felt paralyzed. He wanted to say something, but what? His parents weren't being overtly racist. They were just expressing concern about practical considerations. But as the conversation continued, with his parents talking around the real issue and Ayana responding with increasing coolness, Ethan found himself staying silent, trying to keep the peace, trying to smooth things over without making anyone uncomfortable. "I think," Ayana said finally, setting her napkin beside her plate, "that Ethan and I are old enough to handle whatever challenges come our way." "Of course," Carol said quickly. "I didn't mean to imply otherwise. And I think," Ayana continued, standing up, "that I should probably get some fresh air." "Excuse me." She walked toward the front door, leaving Ethan sitting frozen at the table with his parents. "She seems nice," his mother said after a moment, her voice carefully neutral. "She is nice," Ethan said, finally finding his voice. "It's just," his father started. "It's just what?" "Son, we like her. We do. But are you sure you've thought this through? Really thought about what you're signing up for?" Ethan stared at his father. "What am I signing up for?" "A lifetime of explaining yourselves. of dealing with stares and comments, of your children not fitting neatly into either world. Our children, hypothetically, his mother said quickly. Ethan felt something crack open in his chest. I need to go check on her. He found Ayana standing by her car in the driveway, arms wrapped around herself against the cool evening air. Hey, he said softly. She turned to look at him, and he was shocked by the hurt in her eyes. I need to go home, she said. Ayana, they didn't mean… What? They didn't mean what exactly? They're just worried. About what? About you dating a black woman? About what the neighbors might think? They're old-fashioned, Ethan. She turned to face him fully. Do you hear yourself right now? What do you mean? You're making excuses for them. I'm trying to explain. No, you're trying to make their prejudice sound reasonable. You're trying to convince me that their concerns are valid, instead of telling them that their concerns are none of their business. Ethan felt defensive heat rise in his chest. They weren't trying to be hurtful. Intent doesn't matter. Impact does. She pulled her keys from her purse. I sat at that table while your parents questioned whether we should be together because of my race, and you said nothing. I was trying not to make things worse. For who? For them? What about making things worse for me? Ayana, please, let me drive you home. We can talk about this. We just did talk about it. In there. When I needed you to stand up for me, and you chose to keep the peace instead. She got in her car and rolled down the window. I told you I couldn't go through this again. Ethan. I told you I needed someone who would choose me when it was hard. I am choosing you. No, you're not. You're trying to choose everyone. You want me, and you want your parents' approval, and you want everything to be easy. But it's not going to be easy. And if you can't handle that, then we're done here. She started the car. Don't call me until you figure out what you actually want. Because I'm not going to keep waiting for you to grow a spine. Ethan stood in the driveway watching her taillights disappear into the darkness, his heart hammering in his chest. When he went back inside, his parents were cleaning up the dinner dishes with careful, quiet movements. Is everything okay? His mother asked. Ethan looked at them, these people who had raised him, who loved him, who thought they were protecting him, and felt something shift inside his chest. No, he said, everything is not okay. He left without another word, driving home through empty streets with the taste of failure bitter in his mouth. The next few days passed in a haze of regret and second-guessing. Ethan threw himself into work, ripping out old cabinets and installing new flooring with more force than necessary. Mark tried to get him to talk about what had happened, but Ethan just shook his head and kept working. On Wednesday, Mrs. Green called him directly. Young man, she said without preamble, what did you do to my Ayana? Mrs. Green. She came to see me yesterday and looked like her heart was broken. Since you're the only young man she's mentioned in months, I figure you must have done something stupid. Ethan sank into a chair. I did. You want to tell me about it? He found himself spilling the whole story, the dinner, his parents' comments, his own cowardly silence, Ayana's decision to end things. Mrs. Green listened without interrupting. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. That girl has been hurt before, she said finally, by a man who made her feel like she wasn't worth defending. You understand that? Yes, ma'am. So when you sat silent at that table, letting your parents question her worth, you broke something in her that was already fragile. I know. I know I messed up. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I don't know. She won't talk to me. Maybe she shouldn't. Maybe you need to do some work on yourself before you deserve her attention again. What kind of work? The kind where you decide who you want to be. The kind where you stop being afraid of disappointing people and start being afraid of disappointing yourself. That night, Ethan couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the dinner, hearing his parents' careful words, seeing Ayana's face as she realized he wasn't going to defend her. At 2 in the morning, he got dressed and drove to his parents' house. They were surprised to see him standing on their doorstep in the middle of the night, but they let him in. We need to talk, he said. Ethan sat across from his parents in their living room, the same room where everything had fallen apart 3 days earlier. His father wore his old robe and slippers. His mother had thrown a cardigan over her nightgown. They both looked confused and worried. Ethan, what's wrong? Carol asked. It's 2 in the morning. What's wrong is that I've spent 32 years being a coward, he said. And 3 days ago, I lost the best thing that ever happened to me because I was too scared to stand up to you." His parents exchanged glances. "Son," his father started. "No, let me talk." Ethan's voice was steady, calmer than he felt. "Saturday night, you questioned whether Ayana and I should be together because she's black. You talked about practical considerations and different backgrounds and what people might think, and I sat there and said nothing. We were just concerned," his mother began. "You were being racist." The word hung in the air like a slap. "That's not fair," Bill said, his voice rising. "We're not racist people. We just want what's best for you." "What's best for me according to who? According to you? According to the neighbors? According to people I don't even know?" Ethan stood up, pacing to the window and back. "Do you know what Ayana told me on our second date?" She said her ground rules. "No jokes about race. Don't pretend color. Doesn't matter. And don't make her feel like a secret. You made her feel like a problem to be solved. Like something I needed to be protected from." His voice cracked slightly. "She's the kindest, smartest, most caring person I've ever met. She helps elderly people regain their independence. She makes me want to be a better man. And you sat at that table questioning whether she's good enough for your son." Carol's eyes filled with tears. "Ethan, we love you. We just don't want you to get hurt." "Hurt by what? By loving someone who happens to be a different color than me?" "By other people's reactions," his father said. "By the way some people will treat you, the way they'll treat your children. So your solution is to only love people who won't challenge anyone's assumptions? To choose my relationships based on what makes strangers comfortable? We just think." "You think what?" Ethan's voice was getting louder now, years of swallowed words finally breaking free. "You think I should find a nice white girl who won't cause any trouble? Someone who fits into your idea of what my life should look like?" His parents sat in stunned silence. "I love her," Ethan continued, his voice quieter now but no less intense. "I love her laugh, and her stubbornness, and the way she takes care of people. I love how she challenges me to be honest instead of polite. I love the way she looks at the world, and I love the way she makes me want to look at it too." "Ethan, I'm not finished." He sat back down, leaning forward. "I've spent my whole life avoiding conflict, trying to keep everyone happy. But you know what? I'm miserable. I'm 32 years old, and I've never fought for anything that mattered to me. I've never taken a risk that might disappoint someone else." He looked at his mother, then his father. 3 days ago, the woman I love walked out of this house because I wouldn't defend her. Because when it mattered, when she needed me to choose her over your comfort, I failed. And if I never see her again, it's because I was too worried about hurting your feelings to protect hers." Carol wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "We didn't realize—" "Yes, you did. You knew exactly what you were doing. You were hoping I'd come to my senses and end things before they got too serious." His father shifted uncomfortably. "Son, we just want you to be happy. Then, support my choices. Support the woman I love, because she makes me happy in a way I didn't even know was possible." The room fell quiet. Outside, a car drove by, its headlights sweeping across the window. "What do you want from us?" his mother asked finally. "I want you to examine why you reacted the way you did. I want you to think about what you're really afraid of. And I want you to decide whether you're going to be part of my life or part of my problem." "That's not fair." "Life isn't fair, Mom. Ayana faces prejudice every day just for existing in her own skin. I face absolutely no consequences for being with her except for other people's stupid opinions. And if I can't handle that, then I don't deserve her." Bill leaned back in his chair. "What if we can't change how we feel?" Ethan met his father's eyes. "Then you'll see a lot less of me, because I'm not going to keep choosing your approval over my happiness. I'm done living my life trying to make everyone else comfortable." He stood up. "I'm going home. And tomorrow, I'm going to try to figure out how to earn back the trust of the woman I lost because I was too much of a coward to stand up for what's right." At the door, his mother caught his arm. "Ethan, wait." He turned back. We'll try to do better, to understand." Her voice was small, uncertain. "We love you. We don't want to lose you. Then prove it. Because right now, I need to go figure out if it's too late to fix what I broke." He drove home as the sun was beginning to rise, exhaustion pulling at his bones, but his mind clearer than it had been in days. Over the next week, Ethan threw himself into a different kind of work. He read articles about interracial relationships, about microaggressions, about the weight of being the only black person in white spaces. He thought about every interaction he'd witnessed between Ayanna and other people, seeing things he'd missed before. The way the hostess at restaurants sometimes looked surprised when they sat together. The way some of his co-workers had gone quiet when he mentioned dating someone. The careful way Ayanna had chosen her words when talking to his parents. The extra effort she'd put into her appearance. She'd been navigating a minefield that he hadn't even realized existed. Mark found him at a job site on Friday afternoon, installing new kitchen cabinets with grim determination. "Dude, you look terrible. Thanks. Have you called her?" "She told me not to. And you're listening?" Ethan set down his drill. "She said not to call until I figured out what I actually want, so that's what I'm doing." "And what do you want?" "I want to be the kind of man who deserves her. I want to be someone she can trust to have her back, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." Mark studied his face. "So what's your plan?" "I don't have one yet." That night, as Ethan sat at his kitchen table eating takeout and staring at his phone, Mrs. Green called again. "How's that work coming along?" she asked without preamble. Slowly. "Good. The important kind always does." "Mrs. Green, can I ask you something?" "Shoot. How did you know your husband was the right one?" She was quiet for a moment. "He was the first man who never asked me to be smaller than I was, who never made me feel like my opinions were too much or my dreams were too big. Who stood up to his own family when they questioned whether he should be with a girl from the wrong side of town. He did that? Honey, love ain't about finding someone who fits into your life without changing anything. It's about finding someone worth changing your life for. I think I understand that now. Understanding's just the first step. What you do next is what counts." 2 weeks after the disastrous dinner, Ethan made a decision. He drove to Lena's apartment on a Saturday afternoon, carrying a handwritten letter. Lena opened the door, looking suspicious. "What do you want?" "I want to give this to Ayanna," he said, holding up the envelope. "But I know she doesn't want to see me right now. I was hoping you might deliver it for me." "What makes you think I'd do that?" "Because you love your sister, and you want her to be happy, and maybe this will help her decide whether I'm worth another chance." Lena crossed her arms. "What's in it?" "An apology, and an explanation, and a promise." "What kind of promise?" "The kind I should have made a long time ago." She studied his face for a long moment, then took the letter. "If this is more of your wishy-washy bullshit, I'm going to hunt you down. It's not. Good, because that girl has been crying herself to sleep for 2 weeks, and if you're just playing games, I'm not playing games. I love her, Lena, and I'm going to spend however long it takes proving that to her." That evening, Lena found Ayanna on her couch, surrounded by tissues and watching sad movies. "You have mail," Lena said, holding out the envelope. Ayanna looked at her sister's handwriting on the front. "From Ethan? He asked me to give it to you. I told him if it was garbage, I'd hunt him down. And I don't think it's garbage." Ayanna took the letter, but didn't open it immediately. "What if it just makes things worse? Then you'll know for sure that you're better off without him. But what if it doesn't?" That night, alone in her apartment, Ayanna finally opened the envelope. The letter was 3 pages long, written in Ethan's careful handwriting. "Ayanna, I know you told me not to contact you, and I'm sorry for going around that by asking Lena to deliver this. But there are things I need to say, and I couldn't live with myself if I didn't at least try. You were right about everything. I was a coward at that dinner. I was a coward when I whispered that prayer on our first date. I've been a coward my entire life, choosing comfort over courage, politeness over honesty. When my parents questioned our relationship, I should have shut it down immediately. I should have made it clear that you are not up for debate, that their concerns about other people's opinions are not our problem, and that I am proud to be with you regardless of who approves. Instead, I sat there trying to keep everyone happy while you felt attacked and unsupported. I failed you in the most fundamental way possible. I've spent the last 2 weeks trying to understand why I reacted the way I did. Part of it was how I was raised in a family that avoids conflict at all costs. Part of it was my own fear of standing up for anything that might be difficult. But mostly, It was because I had never really examined my own assumptions about race and relationships. I thought that being colorblind was enough. I thought that loving you meant I couldn't be part of the problem. I was wrong. I've been reading and learning and trying to understand what you face every day that I've been blind to. I'm starting to see how much extra work you do just to move through the world, how you code switch your voice, choose your clothes carefully, smile at people who don't deserve your kindness just to make them comfortable. I see now that when I failed to defend you at that dinner, I wasn't just being passive. I was actively choosing my parents' comfort over your dignity. I was making you carry the burden of their prejudice alone. I confronted my parents that night. I told them their behavior was unacceptable, and I made it clear that if they can't respect you, they'll see less of me. My mother cried. My father got angry. But I'm done prioritizing their feelings over yours. I know this letter doesn't fix what I broke. I know it might be too late. But I need you to know that losing you was the wake-up call I apparently needed. I will never again sit silent while anyone questions your worth. I don't know if you'll ever be able to forgive me. I don't know if you'll ever trust me again. But I want you to know that whether we're together or not, I'm going to keep doing the work to be better. For you, for anyone else I might love in the future, and for myself. You deserved better from me. You deserve better from the world. And if you give me another chance, I promise you'll never have to wonder where I stand again. I love you. Not the safe version of you that makes my life easier. All of you, exactly as you are. Complications and challenges and beauty and strength. If you're willing to try again, I'll be waiting. If you're not, I understand. Love, Ethan. Ayana read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down her face. Then she set it aside and stared out her window at the city lights. He was saying all the right things, but David had said nice things too. In the beginning, the difference was in the specifics. The acknowledgement of what she faced that he'd never seen before. The concrete action he'd taken with his parents. The understanding that this wasn't about him learning to tolerate her blackness, but about him learning to see and fight the systems that made her life harder. Still, words were just words. The next evening, a massive storm hit the city. Wind howled around Ayana's building, and just after 8 o'clock, the power went out. Ayana lit candles and checked on her elderly neighbors, making sure they had flashlights and weren't scared. Mrs. Jefferson down the hall was panicking about falling in the dark. Mr. Daniels was grumpy about his medical alert system losing power. As she was helping Mrs. Jefferson find her emergency supplies, her phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. I heard there's a bad storm on your side of town. If power's out and you need anything, I'm nearby. No pressure. Ayana stared at the message. He wasn't asking to talk about their relationship. He wasn't pushing for more than she'd offered. He was just there, available if she needed help. Another crash of thunder shook the building, and Mrs. Jefferson let out a scared whimper. Ayana texted back, "Power's out. Some of my elderly neighbors are scared. Do you have extra flashlights?" 20 minutes later, Ethan appeared in her hallway with an armload of flashlights, battery-powered lanterns, and emergency supplies. He didn't ask to come in. He didn't try to have a conversation about them. He just helped. Together, they moved through the building, checking on residents, distributing light sources, helping Mr. Daniels reset his medical equipment. They worked as a team, communicating in half-sentences and shared glances, falling back into their old rhythm without discussion. When they'd made sure everyone was safe and comfortable, they found themselves sitting on the floor outside Ayana's apartment door, a battery-powered lantern between them, casting soft shadows on the walls. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for coming, for helping without making it about us. I meant what I said in the letter. Whether we're together or not, I want to be someone you can count on." She looked at him in the dim light. "I read it, the letter. And I don't know what to do with it. You don't have to do anything with it right now." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the storm outside and the quiet sounds of the building settling around them. "Mrs. Green thinks I should give you another chance," Ayana said finally. "What do you think?" "I think I'm scared." "Of what?" "Of believing you've really changed and finding out you haven't. Of getting hurt again." She pulled her knees up to her chest. "Of wanting this to work so badly that I ignore red flags again." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. What would it take for you to trust me again? I don't know. Time, I guess. And proof that this isn't just pretty words. What kind of proof? She thought about it. I need to see how you handle difficult situations when I'm not around. I need to see you stand up to your parents again if they backslide. I need to see you notice things, microaggressions, assumptions, the work I have to do that you've never had to think about. Okay. And I need to know that you're doing this for you. Not just to get me back, that you're committed to growing regardless of what happens between us. I am. She studied his face in the lantern light. I can't promise I'll ever trust you completely again. I understand. And I can't promise this will work out. I know. But, she said, taking a shaky breath, I'm willing to try, slowly, with clear boundaries and open communication and the understanding that you have a lot to prove. Ethan felt something tight in his chest finally release. What does that look like? I don't know yet. Maybe coffee. Maybe dinner. Maybe we take things day by day and see what happens. I can work with that. The lantern flickered, its battery running low. I should probably go inside, Ayana said, but she didn't move. Yeah, me too. But they stayed there a few minutes longer, sitting in the dimming light, both afraid to move too fast and break whatever fragile thing was rebuilding between them. 3 weeks later, Ethan got a phone call that surprised him. Ethan, this is Carol, Ethan's mother. Mom, I know who you are. Right. Of course. A pause. I was wondering if I could talk to Ayana. If she'd be willing to meet me for coffee. Why? Because I owe her an apology. A real one. And because I want to understand how to do better. Ethan was quiet for so long that his mother thought the call had dropped. I'll ask her, he said finally. But it's up to her. Ayana agreed to meet Carol, but only at a public place and only for an hour. They met at Common Ground Cafe on a Tuesday afternoon when it was nearly empty. Carol looked nervous, twisting her wedding ring as she waited. When Ayana arrived, she stood up uncertainly. Thank you for coming, Carol said. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. They ordered drinks and sat at a table by the window. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. I owe you an apology, Carol said finally, for how I acted at dinner, for the things I said, for making you feel unwelcome in my home. Ayana waited. I've been doing some reading since then, some thinking, and I've realized that my concerns weren't really about you at all. They were about my own fear of change, my own discomfort with situations I don't understand. Go on. I was raised to believe that staying within your own community was safer, easier, and I passed that belief on to my son without ever questioning whether it was right. Carol's voice was shaky. When Ethan brought you home, you challenged that worldview just by existing, and instead of examining my assumptions, I tried to make you the problem. Ayana sipped her coffee, saying nothing. I want you to know that I think you're lovely, smart, kind, clearly devoted to helping people, and I can see how happy you make Ethan. Carol met her eyes. I was wrong to question your relationship. It wasn't my place, and my reasoning was rooted in prejudice I'm only now beginning to acknowledge. Okay, I know an apology doesn't fix everything. I know I have a lot of work to do to earn your trust, but I wanted you to know that I'm committed to doing that work. Ayana studied Carol's face. What kind of work? I've joined a discussion group at our church about racial reconciliation. I'm reading books Ethan recommended. I'm trying to notice my assumptions and challenge them. She paused. And I'm hoping you might be willing to give me another chance to show you who I want to be, rather than who I was that night. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest, and it was a start. I appreciate the apology, Ayana said, and I appreciate that you're doing the work. But rebuilding trust is going to take time. I understand, and I need to see consistent change, not just words. Of course. They talked for another half hour, not about race or relationships, but about Carol's work with the church food bank, about Ayana's clients, about small, ordinary things that help them see each other as people rather than problems to solve. When they parted ways, Carol hesitated. I hope, she said carefully, that we'll have more opportunities to get to know each other. We'll see, Ayana replied, but her tone was softer than it had been at the beginning of their conversation. 2 months later, on the anniversary of their first disastrous blind date, Ethan made a reservation at Rosemary's Bistro. Same table, same time. He arrived early, just like before. But this time, when he sat down, he didn't whisper any prayers. This time, he waited with anticipation rather than dread. When Ayana walked in, he stood up proudly, openly happy to see her. She wore a blue dress that brought out her eyes, and she smiled a real smile when she saw him. "Fancy meeting you here," she said as she sat down. "I figured it was time to make some better memories in this place." They ordered the same meals they'd had that first night, laughing about how awkward they'd been, how far they'd come. "I have something for you," Ethan said after their main course arrived. He pulled out a small box, not a ring box, but something similar. Ayana's eyebrows rose. "It's not what you think," he said quickly. "Not yet, anyway." Inside the box was a simple silver necklace with a small pendant shaped like a compass. "I thought about what you said," he explained as she lifted it from the box. "About being someone's secret, about being hidden." He paused. "This is my promise that you'll never have to wonder where I stand. That, I'll always know which direction to go when it comes to choosing you." Ayana's eyes filled with tears as she fastened the necklace around her neck. "It's beautiful. Not as beautiful as you." After dinner, they walked slowly to their cars, hands intertwined, neither wanting the evening to end. "Ethan," Ayana said as they reached her car. "Yeah, I love you too." It was the first time she'd said it since that night they'd fallen asleep on his couch, the first time since everything had broken apart and been slowly rebuilt. "Yeah," he said, grinning like a teenager. "Yeah, not the version of you that says all the right things, the real you, the one who's doing the work, even when it's hard. The one who chose me over comfort." He kissed her then, soft and sweet under the streetlights, and she felt something settle in her chest that had been restless for months. 6 months later, at Kelly's lake house on a perfect summer evening, Ethan got down on one knee on the dock where they'd first really talked. The ring was simple, beautiful, chosen with careful attention to what Ayana loved rather than what would impress other people. "I can't promise you a life without difficult conversations," he said as she cried and laughed and said yes. "I can't promise that my family or the world will always get it right, but I can promise that you'll never face those difficulties alone. I can promise that I'll keep learning, keep growing, keep choosing you every single day." At their wedding a year later, Mrs. Green sat in the front row, dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief and telling anyone who would listen that she'd known they were perfect for each other from the very beginning. Carol Grant cried during the ceremony, not from sadness, but from joy at watching her son marry someone who had made him braver, kinder, more honest. She and Ayana weren't best friends yet, but they were family now, and that was a start. Thomas Brooks walked his daughter down the aisle with quiet pride, having watched Ethan prove over and over that he was worthy of Ayana's trust. And as they exchanged vows under a canopy of flowers, promising to love each other through whatever challenges came their way, Ayana thought about that first night at Rosemary's Bistro, about his whispered prayer and her decision to stay long enough to see who he really was. Sometimes the best love stories didn't start with perfection. Sometimes they started with broken people, learning how to choose each other, how to grow together, how to build something beautiful from honest words and brave choices. As they kissed for the first time as husband and wife, the restaurant where they'd met seemed very far away. But the lessons they'd learned there about courage, about truth, about love that demanded the best of them both would stay with them forever. Because real love wasn't the absence of fear or prejudice or difficulty. Real love was the choice to face those things together, to do better tomorrow than you did today, and to never stop fighting for the person who made you want to be worthy of their trust. And in the end, that was exactly what they had built, a love worth fighting for.